Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Please ask you hit that like and subscribe button, really helps me out. Today's video I'm going to talk to you about the rigid chassis issues that I highlighted in my intro video to this series. So if you've not seen that yet, check that out. But basically I was pretty happy with the build quality overall. It was a few areas with some weld spats that needed cleaning up, but besides that, all the welds look quite tidy. All the holes have been re-drilled, tapped, no issue with that. However, I had the fuel tank holes not lining up. The holes for the handbrake mounting were in a slightly different position to my old chassis. And lastly, I was missing a bracket to hang the exhaust hanger on the rear. And so I contacted Richard Chassis to sort of ask them about this. And so this video is going to be more a review of their customer service or follow-up aftercare, whatever you want to call it. I had a few people ask me for this, but I wanted to wait till everything was closed off before posting anything online. So yeah. So the first thing I sort of sent to Richard Chassis with these issues was I asked them whether I'd actually had the right chassis, because I've heard stories before of people getting different model chassis, and I thought maybe I'd been sent a later model one because the holes for the forward fuel tank were not lining up and I was missing the bracket on the aft, because on the latest design they deleted that to fit the rear fuel tank, and so in my head I thought maybe I'd been fitted a later chassis and that was the issue of these problems. But they came back and confirmed that it was correct and that the issues I had wrong were more or less the same on all of them and that they were up to me to rectify. I wasn't too happy with that. Obviously it's more time, more money rectifying those problems. So first thing they did was that they offered me a replacement chassis, which they would take photos of my old chassis and build it as a replica, if you like, with the brackets in all the correct places, etc, etc. However, they informed me that this would be another £150 for the replacement plus VAT, plus I would then have to repay delivery again, £170 plus VAT again, and wait 6 to 10 weeks again, which I didn't really want to do. Now, with this paying the £150 extra for the modifications on the chassis, I can understand this and it's a price I'd be willing to pay. However, paying again for delivery, especially when you consider that when I had my chassis delivered the first time, I'm pretty sure my chassis was ready about 2 weeks before it got delivered here, and that's because they were waiting for more chassis in my area to be ready so they can deliver them all at the same time. Obviously, if you've got one order down south of London or south of England and one up in Scotland, it makes sense to wait for groups to be set together so you can just do one run in the same direction and deliver all the chassis. But yeah, they fit 6 chassis on the back of their lorry, so you add up the delivery for that, it's over £1,000, and yeah, they're making a lot of money off delivery, I think, which for the initial one I have no problem with. They're a business, their function is to make money, but when they're sending out a replacement, having to pay that delivery again is not something I would deem as good customer service, especially when the issues that were wrong with the chassis were due to them possibly not advertising it properly. So moving on from there, didn't want to wait the 6 to 10 weeks. I wanted to start swapping everything over because I had a time slot booked basically to do this work. Didn't want it to stretch out into a year or 2 year long project, waiting for parts, etc. And also didn't want a lot of value of parts sat here without a chassis to go on. So they said to me they would make me a new bracket for the exhaust and that would bolt on. Unfortunately though, I would have to drill through my current chassis to get that to fit. But yeah, they sent that through quite quickly, but the other 2 issues with the handbrake and the fuel tank, at first they sort of denied they were issues, said that they'd sold hundreds of these chassis, never had problems, that they'd spoken to their chassis fitter and he said that the reason they were not lining up was due to my incompetence. Maybe they didn't say that in so many words, but said that if it was a capable mechanic or something like that fitting it, then there would be no issue with it. I sent them pictures of these showing the discrepancies. As you can see, I'll put them up on the screen, talk you through them. So here I've got the new exhaust bracket, that'll sit on the chassis like that. 2 holes on the top, they go through where the fuel tank mounted holes are if you have the rear tank, and then they've put a small support hole here, so said I'd have to drill through with a self-tapper to support the bottom there. Obviously, cutting into your new galvanised chassis is not something you want to do. You're exposing that steel to potential corrosion, and you can use zinc-rich primers, cold galvanising sprays and stuff, but it's never going to be as good as the hot galvanising I originally had. So yeah, it's not ideal, but I was happy with the solution. I'll talk you through the other two now, and then I'll show you some of the emails, and we'll do a conclusion at the end. So I've included this here just to sort of show a reference of how I've taken measurements. There's a spirit level with a laser on it, and I've pointed that from the opposite rail over towards the holes on the handbrake mounting bracket. So on the left we've got the old chassis, and the right the new Richard chassis. The laser's about 32mm above the top of the chassis rail, and you can see on the old chassis it's lining up more or less to the centre of the hole. If anything, the hole's just slightly under. And on the new chassis, the hole's way above where the laser is. I know the shape's a bit different, but that doesn't matter too much if the holes line up correctly. So taking a measurement here, about 25mm difference, and I said this to Richard Chassis several times, sent them the photos, and they would still deny there was any problem, and sort of said that the handbrake should fit with no issues, and the size is the same on all the Series 2s. As you can see, that's not the case when comparing to the old chassis. So next up we've got the fuel tank, and this goes onto the outrigger on the driver's side. You can see I've got one bolt in on the outside. The hole in the middle is only partially visible, and the hole next to the chassis rail, you can't even see it, that's far out it is. So I measured these, and each hole was about 10mm out, so compounded over two holes you're out 20mm. So again, sent this picture to Richard Chassis, and yeah, they said I needed to fit the older bolt design with the rubber bush, but that wouldn't fit. And yeah, I was pretty sure this is the design for mine that is correct. And so we had a bit of a discussion about that, let's say. So as I previously mentioned, I had a series of email exchanges with Richard Chassis. I think total of about 30 emails in total. Sending them pictures explaining where the discrepancies were, and at first they were pretty firm, saying that the fault was with me not being able to fit things correctly, and that they've sold hundreds of these, and that the tolerances on Land Rovers are massive and I should expect to have these problems. But I wasn't really happy to accept that, especially when the chassis was sold on the website as being for a suffix A to C. So yeah, they were pretty adamant on their stance, and I wasn't too happy with it, especially when the way it was described on their website. So in the end, they had to threaten taking further action against them. And with this, I got the reply you can see on the screen now. Basically, they're still not admitting that there was anything wrong with it, but saying that, yeah, the way it was advertised maybe wasn't correct. And they gave me for gratis payment, £150, just to cover the cost of materials and time to rectify the parts to get them to fit as they should have done in the first place. So yeah, final thoughts. Obviously they ended up paying me a sum of money back, but it was a lot of hassle to get it, and I don't think that to force further action on a company is something you have to do. I think they should have realised the mistakes and sorted it a bit sooner. I was waiting a long time. I think it was getting on for 5 months after when I first purchased the chassis that I had this resolved. So it's a lot of time there, and they paid me for the time modifying the chassis, if you like, but there was a lot of hours spent emailing them, doing my own research to see if maybe I'm wrong or at some point my chassis has changed and it's not correct, and that takes its toll on you as well. But saying that, they said that, like I said before, the build quality I was happy with, and now that I know that they can do a replica for £150 more, I think in the future that would be a much better option to go for. It's now been about 6 weeks since my last correspondence with them saying that they would look into updating their website with this. I've taken a look, and the description advertising it is exactly the same. So they've not updated the website. There is still the tab for customized chassis, but there they speak more about 8-wheel drive or Carmichael fire trucks, etc. like that, and not a custom one to make it exact replica of what you had before. So I think this is something they can really improve on with their website, and they're advertising what they're actually going to sell you. If you were to ask me would I recommend it to a friend or recommend it to someone, I would probably say no, I wouldn't recommend them. I've never bought a Marsland chassis for a series Land Rover, but I've bought quite a few for the Defenders and I've never had any issues with those. So I can't comment on their customer service because I've never had to use it, but I only ever hear good things about Marsland, and so if I was to buy again, I'd probably go down that route. Saying that, for the product, what you get, if you're getting a later Series 3, you're absolutely sure what you're getting is correct for your vehicle, and you may be paying that bit extra to have all the brackets in the correct position, I think it is a product I would buy again, but not recommend, if that makes sense. So hopefully you've liked this video. It's been a bit informative for you, sort of talking through some of the issues I've had with Richard chassis. Thankfully now they're all resolved, I can continue on with my build. But next video I'm going to do one on the shield bulkhead, which as you know I had a few issues with, and so we're going to see how the customer service for Terrain Tech parts are. So make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell notification to be notified when that video is out. Thank you very much.